Let's talk about protest signs. These are signs that make some kind of social or political commentary. They exist to change people's minds, to affect change, to make people aware of something, or simply as an expression of your feelings. In the case of right now, they're extreme expressions of rage and pain. So we have been in a period of excessive political and protest signage, I think, since Donald Trump went into the White House. So signs have always been around, of course. If you want to protest, this is the easiest, cheapest way of doing so, and one in which we as Americans often think is relatively safe. And I do say relatively because some people are being shot with rubber bullets, other people are being attacked, yelled at, guns are being pointed at them. But protest signs are still, it's the easiest way for you to make a statement, hope that you get some attention without spending any money. And you can be sociable, even though it's difficult right now during COVID-19. So what is a good protest sign? What's important about a protest sign? How do you make one that's super noticeable? First, it's the slogan. You need a really great slogan, and that slogan, if you have a good one, is almost defines the movement historically. So you think of all of those women with the Votes for Women signs, or you think of the anti-Vietnam War protesters holding Make Love Not War posters and handing out flowers and things of that nature. When I think of the Women's March, and I've been to a couple of the Women's Marches in downtown LA, the first one was amazing. There were so many people there, and people were grieving. They were grieving the fact that they thought that they had a normal country and that a woman would have been president. Instead, they have someone talking about grabbing people by the pussy. So my biggest memory of that, beyond the chants and the songs, were, all of these posters talking about pussy power and people wearing the pink hats, and it was really quite amazing. At the moment, we are in the midst of protesting about the murder of George Floyd and so many other people, and the Black Lives Matter movement, BLM, has become a major slogan, and just immediately brings you into the horror, which is what people want. They want you to know that there's horror around this form of racism, and that there needs to be education and a reckoning and transformation and so much. The weird thing about the Black Lives Matter is that a lot of people intentionally misunderstand what it means, and then they're like, all lives matter, blue lives matter, etc. And so one of the posters that I found really effective that I've seen that people have created to comment on this is where it says something to the nature of, we said Black Lives Matter. We didn't say other lives don't matter, but there's violence against Black lives now. So that is why we say Black Lives Matter. So it's an explanation for people who either don't understand what's going on or don't want to hear. Maybe it's almost like an intentional amnesia surrounding so much of this, because it is so profoundly disturbing for so many people that we don't want to face it, because it's a whole societal issue, not just an issue of a few people. So this is Marcia Hopkins, who is also a professor at Otis College of Art and Design. She also is a writer and an artist, and we've been friends for many, many years. What do you think of some of the slogans and posters that are popular now with the Black Lives Matters protests?
I think that I can't breathe, as that's been picked up as a slogan. And it's just everywhere on, places you wouldn't expect to see it, or they'll begin with Black Lives Matter. And before it was taboo. Why did they pick that name? It's, all lives matter. And now it seems to have been settled into, the name is important. We have it painted on Hollywood Boulevard. It's painted in front of the White House. It's painted, in other places in the country. And in where Floyd was killed, in the streets, one of the major streets there, they painted all of the names of the people who were recently killed. So it's civil rights. Generally, people think Black people, but civil rights is everyone, and it's everywhere. So in some cases, we're not as bad off as in some other cases, but none of it is good. None of it is right. But I think signs are as individual as people are, except for I can't breathe.
Right. That's an incredible point. Yeah, for me, I can't breathe is really the central slogan of this campaign.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, it's tremendously powerful. Do you remember some of the slogans from the civil rights campaigns of the 60s that were important?
I am a man.
I am a man. Yeah.
We shall overcome.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting to watch the differences in how things were portrayed many years ago and how they're being portrayed today.
Another series of events that I went to were some protests regarding our immigration policy and the fact that we started caging children, which is unbelievable still to me to this day. And some of the most creative posters I've seen were about that, like someone holding up an "Are You My Mother" from the children's book, because there's kids who apparently are not being reunited with their families. We don't know where they are. And they're just getting lost within this system. So a great poster is one that has a great slogan, one that people understand, because if you're protesting, it's not only about you, it's about bringing the public, bringing others into your viewpoint, making them understand why you feel this way. Can you affect change if it's just about you? No. You have to make other people understand what you're talking about. Get as creative as you can. Another thing that's appealing about protest signs, some people, like I'll sometimes glitter it up and make something cool or something 3D. But you know what? Most of the posters I've seen at various BLM protests recently have been on one side of cardboard, Amazon packaging, because we're all getting so much delivered to our homes during this quarantine and semi-quarantine time period. So you can recycle. You can do this so cheaply. All you need is a Sharpie and a box that you can cut up. And that makes this, ultimately democratic. And that's another part of why it's so effective. A lot of the protests we have now, from Occupy through to BLM, are about not necessarily eating the rich, but making people recognize that the inequality is widening in our country, and people are profoundly disturbed by it.
People are very, very creative with the kinds of signs that they make. They have things you wouldn't expect to see. And most of them can be, or many of them can be very funny. Many of them can be very scary, and some might even be offensive to some people. But it's okay, because it's whatever you're feeling and you're able to put on a card. And it's interesting to see that some people will just have a sheet of paper and write what they want. Some people will go all the way to the other end and pay for graphics and, something that's professionally printed. So it depends, I guess, on how much money you have, on how much effort you put into what you do, and how much you actually care about the protest.
Right.
But still, it's a way to express the way you feel, and whether there's change or not, there's still, again, you're passing on a process to someone else, someone who will realize that this is the way we're seeing things. And they may or may not change, because, our government doesn't necessarily like the idea of change. Just be able to express how you feel. And the idea of showing it to who knows how many people are in a protest, but the idea of knowing this many people see it And the idea of knowing this may be one of the posters that's caught on the TV screen, then yeah, I think it's very satisfying, especially if you look at it later and say, this is a really good poster. This is really what I want to say.
Signage goes with any perspective. So, the Tea Party, they were great at doing effective signs that, used to make me crazy to read. But they were really good at it because a lot of their signs were short and to the point, very pointed types of criticism about, at the time, czars, if you remember, and things of that nature. A lot of religious groups are very good at protest signs. So some interesting ones I just saw at Mardi Gras prior to the Corona apocalypse. There were a lot of people talking about, sinning and going to hell, and they were on loudspeakers in the middle of Jackson Square. And then there was a giant group of young people, and I say young people, saying, sorry for mean Christians. And I thought that was the most effective counter-protest I had ever seen. And any protest can have a counter-protest. So here in Huntington Beach, you can see there's BLM protesters on one side of the street. On the other side of the street, you have pro-Trump protesters, and sometimes you have anti-mask protesters over there too. It's a very interesting kind of dynamic in Huntington Beach. While we were at that protest, we actually saw the two sides converge for a minute. They met in the middle of the street. I don't know why. I think one started walking forward, so the other side started walking forward, and the police were immediately there to separate them while everyone started yelling at each other. It was very uncomfortable. And, protest, counter-protest, the problem always is it can kick off at any moment, and that can help to define a movement and to help enact change.